So what we're going to do today is wrap it all up. This is the 6th lecture of this module. I really appreciate everyone that contributed through asking me questions. I've included a lot of what has been discussed before the class, after the class, or via email into the conversation. I really look forward to your half-page summaries. And again, please ask at least one question. So again, that's the way you verify that I'm actually paying attention as well. Okay, and what I want to do today, first of all, I decided to lay out what I thought would be what I was trying to communicate, that this is only going to work, the innovation, if you work really, really, really hard, if you learn to learn. So what I've been doing here, if nothing else, just be aware, I knew very little about this 3 years ago. So I had to learn it, and I'm not teaching you everything. I'm making you aware of how difficult it is. And all along the way, the worst you can do is pretend that you know everything. Okay? That's how you're going to fail. And you're not going to just learn, you're going to fail because you think you know and you don't. And then the risk management, I think you've seen it as a very constant topic. You have to take risk. You shouldn't take all the risk that's possible thinking it's going to help you. But, you know, I think you got the idea. It's all the whole entrepreneurship. We spent a lot of time on it. I'm not saying here about the customer. I blasted you guys for 2-3 hours about caring about your customer, even though you're working on the technology. So today, we are going to cover these 4 topics, so about 10 minutes each. And I'm going to take a breath definitely after each topic to answer any open questions. And just a matter of flow. And if we can get done 5 minutes early, you and I can talk here in the class. So we're going to try to make this just a little briefer if we can. If we can't, and if we can't get till the end, if we don't talk about financing, that's fine, because that's the worst thing here. That's the thing you don't want to try to do first. That's just, there are plenty of recipes. If you're able to do everything else, don't worry. There'll be money. Yeah, but you got to work on everything else. That's what I'll say to that. So the topics, the product and customer, we hit it last time. And we're going to talk about sales, talk about the team. There are questions on that. I mentioned to you I don't find any good reference, which make it challenging. But anyway, we'll talk about it. And then if we get to it, we'll talk about financing. This is not fun. I have another adapter. Okay. So I want to talk about Professor Eager, which has been a really, really great source of inspiration for me. He's been my mentor essentially for 15 years. He was not my TIS advisor, but he's one of the best teachers, right? He engaged the class, and he also enabled this new format here at MIT of teaching to you guys because he cares about your education. So big thanks to Professor Eager. So this was the outline of the class, and we really pretty much followed it. It evolved a little bit over time. So with respect to the wrap-up from last time, I'm going to need another adapter here. The wrap-up from last time, got to use proven technologies. You got to move fast if you're going to prototype something, really, really fast. And we had this slide from the NSF, and it doesn't say fail, but yes, you're going to build stuff that's not going to work. It's going to have all sorts of issues. And what I mentioned in our case is the first prototype, we had 4 things that's completely wrong in it. Electronic noise, parts breaking, and friction in the system. I'm sure there was more to it. It's just, but we've learned so much because we tested the boundaries very, very quickly. So when you see this slide about going through the cloud, and we've done that in one of the lectures when we were talking about customer discovery. You know, in order to make something good and new, yeah, you got to circulate ideas. You talk to someone, and then you read about something. You go to the lab and do a little thing. Then eventually you say, okay, I'm really getting saturated here. So what you want to do then is not say, well, let's start over again next month. Now you say, we are going to do something. Okay? We are committing to buying this and trying this out and see what happens. So here you have question, and here you have answers. It's great. And then you can go into a next cloud. So this is actually, I didn't think about this ahead, but this is, in my mind, is the way you do it. Okay? Are you moving forward? Yes, you are. Okay? Because you thought about it, the things you didn't know, and you went ahead and say, I'm going to just... Now, you need to be willing to fail here and essentially lose all your money. That's what research and development, the way that in my team we talk about it, is things that we don't know if they're going to work. So if we know it works, don't worry. Now we're just building it. It's design and manufacturing. Well, if we don't know, we're in R&D, and that's really what we're talking about here when we're talking about prototyping. One concept, I believe this is a new slide that you may hear in books, is minimum viable product, MVP. It's been criticized for years. By the way, on sales, I'm using some slides, and I reference the author here, Kent Summers, who's been helping a lot of startups over the past few years around the MIT campus, and he teaches to us entrepreneurs that are part of this venture mentoring service. So he teaches about sales. What we did right is not say, we need this minimum viable product, so we go from product development to selling it. That's just wrong. It's been proven over and over and over again. What we did is the lower path where, started working on it and then got it from a certain stage to another stage and another stage until it really fits what is needed for the application, because you've tested it. You've tested it over and over and over and over again. So I had this slide with all the different generations, and we're not out of it. Right now, this unit is not even, that's last year's unit. Now we're doing what I call the beta tester. So we are now, between now and the design went out, so we got about 45 days to build. By the end of March, we're going to have what I'm going to call our beta tester, something that has all the kind of the key concepts for this. And so when we go and package it, we're not going to make these huge changes again. We're not going to go through this again. This was kind of our last shot for this technology. Yes, Brian?
So it's fairly new, but along the way, was there any discussions with the engine, which is, I guess, MIT's new VC? They have the
all right, great.
Interactions with those people?
Great. So there was a discussion about the engine. I'm going to meet with them in 2 weeks, probably. So I just had this morning the introduction to their coordinator. And we'll talk about why in a few slides. Okay, so we went through this, that you have to go through these curves with respect to working on learning from the customer, and then eventually you speed up your prototyping and you start building. So like I was describing for the case that we've been talking about in class, which is essentially my team, we got blind tested in September. Next week, everybody's going to see the results. We did much better than everybody else, even though we're new, even though the stuff is not packaged. So that's creating the traction. That is what's forcing us to move out of here and go and say, now we have customers. We have 6 months to make them happy so we can raise some good money. Okay? It's really how it works. There's a big reality there that you could say, oh my God, we work on this, 7 days a week sometimes. We've done this, all these calls early in the morning and getting into these conferences, working 16 hours. Well, sure. That was my first thing here. Working hard. All right, it needs to happen. If you don't do that, good luck to you. Now, does it mean I work now 100 hours a week? No, not generally. But I go through peaks. There are weeks that are just more intense. Okay, we are going to talk about sales. This is the way salespeople have been talking about sales for a long time with a startup where it's the hockey stick. So I wanted you to see it. So if you ever hear about it, you'll say, well, yeah, sure, of course. It looks great. You know, you don't make any revenue, and then all of a sudden you start making revenue. The big takeout for you is it did not apply to us, okay? And we'll go a little bit as to why that's the case. But before then, because the reason is the fact that this doesn't work for hardware, you know, long-lasting technology for a new market is it's a new market. That's what we've been doing. This hockey sticks works for something to replace something else. So let's say you want to replace Uber. You know the market, and it's a question of what are the benefits to get people to move over to you, and if you are able to satisfy those very quickly, you get a buy-in. But for us, with our tool, by the time we're able to test it and show that it's good, then for the customers become, oh, well, right, I can really do this. And now they have to start thinking about how they're going to use it in their operation, and there's a time delay there. So that's just part of the reality. But for now, we just assume that you've been good and you've managed to start generating sales. And we've talked about essentially having people write checks. And now they're starting to write more checks. So there's a few concepts here, and those are a little bit two different stories. So this story is the teaching from Kent Summers that I can't summarize all for you. I'm just going to pick and choose things that I want you to be exposed to. And then, of course, there are all sorts of training courses. We'll start with the training course just because it does bring in a topic which is, if you spin selling has been around for years. There are people that are in the sales business say, oh, it changed the way they think about their customer. Essentially, when you meet with a customer in a sales mode, you care about them. You want to know what's going on. They may tell you, well, I had a budget cut. You know, I need to cut 20% of my spending this year. Well, oh my gosh, well, let's talk about your kids or something, because this is not what happened this year, okay? So you need to learn a lot about them, and there's a very, very specific way where you engage with them. So you put a situation, do you have, in our case, do you have pipes? How are you doing with your pipes? You know, are you replacing some? Are you repairing some? No? Okay, so you put yourself into a situation and you try to see if there is anything in their work that they don't really like, that they wish would be different. That's their problem. Now, the implication aspect is, okay, so what does it mean to solve that problem to you? Okay, does it really make a big impact, and on what? And then at the end of the day, you have to sum it up as to, you know, essentially creating this need that they should be doing something. It looks easy, but if you don't even think about these kinds of processes, then you're not going to do it, because you're going to say, hey, I got these great things. I mean, and you know, do you want it? And they have other things to do, right? So in other words, a good customer relationship involves you wanting to know about them a lot more than pushing your agenda on the things you'd like them to do, essentially. So it's not easy. I had my pitfalls, and this is, you know, as a founder of a technology company, I'm, you know, a trained scientist, engineer, and I had my pitfalls, okay? There's a bunch of things I did that were not the right way to do it. And then the question is, after all this time, and it's about right, after 2 years, let's say a year ago, can I really do this? I said, well, I've learned so much by myself by trying it and talking to people that, yeah, okay, yes.
I think there's a lot of similarities between that curve and writing a thesis.
The question is, well, I think it's a comment as to the similarity between this and doing PhD thesis. And I say, yeah, you start very motivated, you don't have any clue of what you're doing, and then you realize, oh boy, 2 years have passed, and here was my plan, and I don't have anything. And then you're like, oh my gosh, am I gonna, yeah. So even in the timing, it's great, right? Because from here, there is no time. But this can be really quick for a PhD thesis. I don't think I'm the only one who woke up and said, oh boy, I've learned, but I haven't done anything. And then a year later, I was done, because if you learn enough, you can actually do it. That's what I do. So very good comment. I appreciate it. Now we're going back to sales as opposed to writing a thesis, which I know is important for you guys. But, efficiency on the y-axis and performance. So if you just push over your agenda, let's say I come with my equipment to a customer, I just make the special trip, I put it on the table, and I say, this is great, this is going to fix this problem, and do you want it? Okay, hey, it's efficient. I'll just say I get a yes or a no, right? Like, I don't care about all your details. Like, do you want this? Okay, so your efficiency is very high, but you may not sign a lot of people up, okay? So I kind of went through that cycle in that order myself, even though I was taking a lot of time, I was just talking about our stuff as opposed to their stuff. So then you become hopeful. So at that point, you're like, well, I don't really understand everything that they need. Hopefully they do. You spend a little more time, you start paying attention, but you still don't have any answer at all. You're not helping them figure out if this is something they should or should not do. Because if you're going to engage in that conversation with them, there are two outcomes. And you have to be willing to live with both. That's part of the sales process. You have to be able to take a no. Pragmatic. So now you're becoming a little bit more, because now you know more and you start being scarce. There's a little bit of a relationship between this and this one, right? Now you know. And then, to some extent, you have to, I guess, put your leap of faith and say, well, I know enough now, so my message about being proactive is you engage with a lot of people and in the right way. So you don't decide who is going to be your customer. They can essentially exit in the process, and that's the funnel. So this is kind of flowing here where you have to not assume that you know best who is going to write you a check. You have to funnel it in. Now, this slide, the reason I put it in is actually has some numbers. So you talk to 100 people, and at the end of the day, you only have 4 winners, okay? That's the kind of things you have to be willing to deal with. So think about the funnel as really a 2-dimensional thing, okay? So there's a square effect here. This is not just going from here to here, okay? It's the area that's reducing. It's the reality. So you need to be smart enough to know the people that you should talk to. And that, when we've talked about the customer discovery, after you've built out that network, yeah, you talk to another of yours that's working to get their solution out on the market, and they'll tell you who just doesn't get new solutions into their operation. So those, yeah, you make them aware. So if one day they decide to do something, they know who to call, but they're really low on your level of effort. You don't really need to know, for example, how many pipes they have. If they come to you, then you'll find out, essentially. But the people that are known to be proactive, that care about the safety of their operation, their reputation, their long-term efficiency, yeah, you pretty much want to reach out to those people as opposed to waiting for them to come. So it's a very, very funnel, still selective. You have to prioritize. And I like this one. So I did quite a bit of research actually for this class. So I'm really mixing all sorts of things. And it's exactly what I was talking about, creating awareness first and interest a consideration, and intent. So I love this one. The one reason I took this one slide is as the word intent. Because when you see intent, you're not done, okay? Because after the intent is where they evaluate you, okay? So be very, very mindful of that. And now the reason for the column to the left of this and to the right is the traditional way of doing things where you really engage with people. But with us, with our technology is, yeah, they'll learn from us and they'll actually read the entire website. And if on the very first conversation, they may be longer along the way than you think. You don't know. So you have to be mindful that because of technology, people forward stuff, people look at your website. They may have talked to one of your team members and you don't really know about it. And therefore, you can't just assume that you have to create awareness at first. They may know a lot. You need to ask them if they've heard about you and what before you start spending time with them and the interest of their time. And typically, if you think you're going to have a 5-minute conversation, if you can take 30 seconds to know where they are at the beginning, you got to use your 4 minutes very, very smartly after that. So the last concept with sales really is not to think that picking a certain set of potential customers is your long-term recipe. When now we're in creating customers. So you want to have balanced activities. So if we go back to this funnel here, you don't do this once. You decide in January, I'm creating awareness, then I funnel it in. You have to constantly feed that funnel at the different levels. So it's multitasking, I guess is what I say. If you get a multitask, then you're able to have a balanced cash flow. You have always new people coming in and you can focus on them. That's also a good advice for consulting services. If you're going to start any company, and you always think a little bit ahead, oh, well, this job's going to finish, I'm going to need another job. You just make a few calls, let people know that you're going to be available in 3 months, and they'll think of something that they really need by then. Okay, so this is more of a details. If you're really doing it, there are tools to help you realize whether you should be spending more time in sales or not. And that was something that I had to learn a month ago, because if you try to keep it all in your head, you may say, well, maybe we need to double our effort so we have enough work for this year, or maybe we have to slow down and not get people too excited and then not be able to deliver. So this process here of forecasting your revenue was something that was highly recommended to do early on, like for us right now, because we're not going to be great at it, but if we find an Excel sheet that we learn how to use, we use it this year, we make mistakes, and then we use it again next year, we're much better, as opposed to just guessing it right now, and then next year just not having any framework. So this is learning to learn. So you go and try something as opposed to nothing, and you probably, in this context of just basic management, you want to stick with it. Even if it's not the perfect way, if it's good enough, then that's what you use over and over again, so you get really good at it and you know your factor. So what examples, let's say this year, I undersubscribe. I just say I'm done, and at the end of the day, I end up only with half of what I wanted. I know next year, if I'm using the same approach, I need to subscribe more. It's just learning how you project, and that's more of really a team effect as opposed to anything else. So no, you'll have to be hearing no. And this slide, we can't go through the details, but essentially, if somebody says you almost want to say thank you so much, because now you know. And you want to ask why, too. That's part of your loop process. But it means now your effort is going somewhere else. The worst situation by far, and that was something that was taught in the class, and I second that, is somebody that doesn't say yes or no, says something like yes, but, or yes, maybe, no, but, and you just don't know. And now you spend time, you try to figure it out. Do you want a demo? And it doesn't end. And there's no perfect recipe, but at least if you acknowledge it, that this is where you are with this customer, maybe you just let them figure it out. I don't know, but it's a place where you can end up spending half your time when you should be spending much less. Some people would even do more. They're like, why are they not answering? Get curious about it. Sometimes you can't change them, okay? So you can try to help them, but if they don't want to help themselves, then you're out. You're doing something else. All right, the last thing here is, and I'm sorry that the screen's not showing well, the slide on Stellar will be good. So you'll have all sorts of people when you go to a meeting. That's what we're doing now. So let's say I come and I don't know anybody. I present what we have and I try to engage, seeing if that would be interesting to you. There'll be somebody there that their goal is to be able to ask, a pricing question or something like that. So they already have you say a number, and then they can be working from there, okay? And you have to answer the questions. That's what you're there for. There's going to be somebody that's going to tell you that he knows a lot more than you do. So that's the expert. So what they say with the expert is agree with him. If you know that you're not going to get past the point of them saying, well, this is going to work for a lot of application, well, maybe it won't work. Now, does anybody else have any other question? Because that's not how you're going to be able to spend your time and learn about them. You want to learn about them as opposed to argue with somebody that really has it. It's okay to disagree, essentially. Which one was the other interesting person? Oh, yeah, the people that just really, really worry. You do want to address those concerns the best you can, because that's where you really get the information. So when you see the worry person, it's great because they are actually communicating you probably what are going to be the aspect that you need to really address before they make a decision. Now, to close that up, you have to make all of these people sufficiently happy for them to have some momentum. Unless you're just very, very lucky and the decision maker doesn't mind saying, well, you guys are wrong. We're still going to do this. You have to get a buy-in. And to get the buy-in, you have to pay attention to everybody. That's actually, yeah. Okay. So as a quick summary here, you don't know who's the winner. You can't chase them. Sales process about helping them achieve their goal, not your goal. So for that, you have to solve their problem and satisfy their need. And there was this comment that I really like from Kent Summers is, to some extent, the sales process is debugging people's idea of spending money. Because that's what these organizations do. They get vendors all the time with new ideas, great slides, great presentation skills, a lot of training, and yet they have to do what is good for them. But in order to be able to do that, you have to address all these little thresholds in the system that gets you past a certain point. And I think we've talked about technology gatekeepers before, but there's essentially a lot of different people in these large organizations that have different roles. And by the time you know their roles, and the really good customers, they'll tell you. You don't even need to figure it out. If you ask them, so in the room here, who's doing what? They'll say, well, he writes the check and he's the gatekeeper, and they won't mind because it's a good use of their time. You're not talking to the wrong person for the right thing. This is not about, this is not a battleground. This is about figuring out what's good for them. So if you come with that mindset, you'll be making a lot of progress very quickly. How to navigate? Well, good luck. Yeah, you ask questions, and when you feel that you don't understand something, it's good to ask for clarification. That's also something that I had to learn. Now, to be able to do this, you do have to pay attention to people. So if somebody is really in a bad mood, you, you don't necessarily want to try to make a lot of progress that day. People that are really good with sales are competitive. I'm not really. So I'm not a long-term salesperson. I'm doing it because I have to do it right now, essentially. So this is just a list for you to consider. And you may say, oh my gosh. Well, what I think I have is I do have a lot of resilience. You know, I've been able to manage people telling me no for over a year of working really hard trying to get a yes. So that was fine. But anyway, these are just thoughts on what you do. And one reason for bringing it up is, let's say you have a great ideas. You don't need to have those skills, but if you're really going to go into a new market and engaging with the customer is very important, you really want to bring somebody on with you early on that can cover this, you know, along with some technical skills. You know, you really need to think about what's going to be needed. And at the end of the day, you need people to write you checks. We've talked about that a number of times. And how to get there is by addressing their pain. So that was the sales section here. Yes?
So when you talked about the sprint selling model, how much of those processes overlap during product development?
The question was the relationship between the spill selling concepts and product development. And I would say that with every person that you engage with, you don't know how long it's going to take to go through the 4 steps, but that's your roadmap. You may have one sit down with somebody that's just really willing to talk to you about it and do all 4 steps one day. For somebody else, it may take a year. And then it's a question of your willingness to wait that long, depending on what you do. Does that answer the question? Yeah.
And one last thing was about, for companies that are always trying to disrupt themselves, do you have an idea in terms of statistics what the retention percentage is for existing customers as opposed to new customers?
The question was about the retention of customers, and no, I'll have to guess. What I would say is if you're really coming into a new market, which is what we're talking about, technology innovation a lot, then you have to be willing to think long term, because if it's really something that they don't have any other way to solve, chances are they will stay with you. You'll have a few people that will depart, but I think your retention rate is a lot higher than in an existing market. Okay, so if you have sales, you have to capture them, make them happy, and raise money to continue make them happy. So the problem is, and I can't, so let's just make a distinction here, because I was talking about technology innovation and right here. So let's just say you have a tech. It doesn't matter what it is, in my mind. And then is there already a need that is fulfilled? Okay, this is very, very specific. Or need unaddressed. So the reason I warn you a lot is, well, at least I want you to be aware, my head has been working on something like this as opposed to something like this. This is the regular hockey stick. This is the other way. So let's go to the other way. And you asked that question about timing, so that's part of the reason I took that slide. So completely new. Nobody has even thought about using Postit. They all want to buy one, okay? But they don't have a budget for next year to buy, $200,000 of Postit. They can only buy whatever, paper. So you have a little kink at the beginning. People are like, oh my gosh, I want to try this. And that was what I said. It's a very big need. They're always going to have some money to say, I'm going to try this out. And the difficult part for you, if you are in this category, is, wow, this is going to take off. This is ready to go. This is great. So my piece of advice, if you see people doing something like that, is really, really, really learn a lot, okay? By engaging there. Because you don't know what is the next opportunity that they're actually going to pay you. It may take a while, okay? So it's a very, very different perspective there. And the other thing I'll say there, this is something that we made a mistake on, is they may have a total budget to spend with you going through that peak. And if I could go back with one of those customers, the peak will last 2 years, because I'll say spend half of it and we'll spend the other half next year, okay? But I did not make that call. Well, anyway, so it's very, very delicate to think about 4 years here. That's a statistic. Steve Blank is essentially well established, and he's referenced by the National Science Foundation, so that small business innovative program development, and he's kind of the father of how you don't spend too much money making a product first and trying to sell it, from a long time ago. He sort of, so all his concepts are being kind of listened to still, but in this statistics, not exactly correct, but hey, I like the idea. I think it makes sense. It's just going to take a while. For us, well, I told you we were 3 years. Our peak in sales was actually just a little over 2 years ago, and right now we are starting to take off. Is it going to plateau? We don't know. So this is the other story here. Somebody else's slide that's more realistic, because it's not a constant process. So you see that initial peak, and then when they say week ones give ups, yeah, some people on the team are like, oh my gosh, this is not going to work now. This customer is saying he doesn't have any money for us next year because, you know, he couldn't show his boss that this was going to save them money next year. So they're done. They're trying to evaluate something else now. So what I'm saying is, in our case, we have a few customers. It's hard to say if they're in for the long run or this is the big trial year. You know, you have to weigh that in. There are a lot of other things. In our case, the new regulation for safer pipelines, and so many people calling in now and say, I want to do this year and blah, 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 that we are having to realize this is true. This is happening now. And so to some extent, here's where people wake up. Oh, we've been waiting for this. And now it's happening, okay? Yes?
Question about how many sales you can anticipate. Let's say for your product, are you imagining 100,000 units sell? Or are you saying, well, probably best circumstance is 1,000 units?
Okay, I'll repeat more or less the question is, how do you imagine your sales? And the answer pretty much is you don't imagine them, all right? You don't want to guess them. You want to do the questioning and figure out, ask the questions on how many of these things they think they want to do. And if you have built that relationship with them, they will tell you. But that's the value of starting very, very early. And we've been talking to this in my team, that engaging with the customer throughout our startup has been or should be more than 1/3 of the effort. In terms of high-level management thinking, what you worry about, you know, when you're driving home or when you're waking up. It's a lot if you're trying to work on a hard technology that.
Yeah, it's a certain idea where you're going to say, oh, I sold 1,000, and then they don't want to buy any more for another 10 years because they're well built, they last.
Okay, so the question was trying to project, because if they make a large purchase, what are they going to do next? Well, that's a very, very interesting topic, because if you're building something that's really, really hard and very, very valuable, it's become kind of well established that actually selling a machine is not such a great idea because of that problem. You get money and then you don't have any more money. So leasing or providing actually the service is how you have constant flow of revenues and also more constant work. So you don't have a company that has to make 10,000 units of something and then the next year there's nothing to do. So you really build a company at that point. So that's a very good question. But anything else on sales? It was still sales, was it? Oh yeah, we were talking about how it could be difficult. So you try to not guess, but you still don't know what's happening. You know, for us, it used to be, I don't know what's going to happen next month, or I don't know what's going to happen next season. Now we're more like, well, we have no idea what's going to happen next year. Okay, so you have the kind of that progression over time, but it creates a lot of trouble. So we're moving to talking about the team for a few minutes. I spoke so much about entrepreneurship that I don't think I need to say a whole lot more. You have to learn from others, handling risk, making decisions, because that's this concept here. Decision, learning, brainstorming, decision again, keep going and going and going as fastest as you possibly can. So learn fast. And then some quotes, and we won't have to read them all. So I took Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg on, handling risk, making decision, wanting to learn, questioning whether you're doing the right thing. That's always the hardest thing. I have to say, for the past 3 years, I spent most of the time thinking about what is it that I'm not thinking about. What is it that's going to be the next problem? And it turns out I'm good at this. I can anticipate problems, and that's paid off a lot. Now, when I see it, let's say I'm like, oh my gosh, because of this and this and this, maybe this customer won't do it. So my best bet at that point is to go back to the team and say, hey, oh my God, we're vulnerable. I don't know if we're going to keep this customer because of this. And then I've got all sorts of skill there. People that know about strategy. I'm sure somebody here in class is good at this, like figuring out how to get where you want to go. For me, I just go kind of guessing. I go like this all the time. Somebody with a strategy has got a longer map. So if you have a problem, you bring it up and you try to resolve it. And that's really, really, really key to the process here. So with respect to team, The 5 Dysfunction of a Team is a book I had to read a while ago that essentially makes some statistics that most teams are not really efficient because they don't really do all of this well. If you do all of this well here in terms of discussing what really are the real problem, the real risk, and then really debating, so disagreeing on how to proceed. That's it in this cloud here. And then making the commitment to do something about it, to write down what are the things you don't know, and then to learn something, and then being accountable. Because if you're here and you're trying to get there, everyone on the team has to know that they need to have some answers. That you can't come up and say, oh, I've actually been thinking about something else. No, that is not, unless you tell us, just come back. So the accountability is very, very, very simple. You do it, or you come back and say, hey, I don't want to do this because blah, blah, blah. And I'd rather do that. That's accountability. And then the last thing on top is results. So look, if you want to be successful, the attention and all those debates and conflicts and, disclosure of vulnerability, all that good stuff, it should be about being able to get to the results faster. Okay, and if you have a team that's able to do that, you are really, really in good shape. Now, to speak to the question that was asked a number of times and how you built the team, the very standard way is, look, find people that you think that this is going to work, that they also have the skills that you need, because, we can go through that in detail, So you need customers. You need technology. You do need some kind of business administration. Really, you gotta have lawyers and accountants, things like that. And then in our case, we have a service. Those are kind of key topic. And we break down our technology in two parts. One is actually making the tool, and one is the analytics. So you have to have people to be able to fulfill those critical roles. Now, let's say 3 years ago, we didn't need anybody to do any field services. So that was not needed to begin with. We needed more frontier people who were willing to just try stuff on the technology that we didn't know it worked. So the concept here of vesting shares is you start with a team, and then people have the option after a year, 2 years, 3 years, say, hey, this doesn't fit me anymore for reason X, Y, and Z. And then they go, and they don't have the equity in the company that you had allocated initially, because that equity allocate over a period of time. A lot of times it's 4 years. If I could do it again, I would have done 5 years. Just look at that statistics from Steve Blake. But the typical way is 4 years. And what it means is, let's say you're going to have, and these percentage could be very high, very low. Let's say you're going to have 1% of the company, because you're young and you're just starting this. Well, if you do a year and then you decide, oh, I want to do something else, then you have 0.25% of the company. It's that simple. So it gives for flexibility. And then along the way, there are other incentives to bring people into the company to fulfill those other needs. So it's a dynamic process, because when you're recruiting or when you're networking to find someone to join your team, it's not an unlimited pool of people, to tell you the truth, right? So you have to sort of take, okay, these are my needs, and this is roughly what I think this person can do based on what I've heard about them. What's the percentage match, and for how long? So I don't know if that helps you, but again, I didn't find any book on it. For us right now, we will have to grow our administration. This is not like, oh, here's a credit card, go and buy stuff and keep your receipts because the IRS wants it. We're going to have to do budgets and things like that. And I mean, it's very, very honestly, we're not very sophisticated with that right now. We're pretty much, the grants that we have are a great way to learn how to do budgeting. I never really had to establish budget before. Now I can do it because I had to do it for the people that give us the money. Same with a business plan. So that was the last thing. And on team, I don't think I want questions. So we're going to move on. I did watch Shark Tank. I told you I was going to do that. And here's some of the takeaway from what National Science Foundation said is, if somebody is thinking about spending money on you, they're going to see how your customer likes you or love you. They're going to look for things that other people can't do. They're going to see your level of commitment. How many conferences you went unpaid to do. And these are the words that they're looking to see, are you solving really a big problem? And are you going to be able to execute? The way that you can think about convincing them is showing them progress. You've made some sales, so the case studies, why the people have spent the money and what are they happy after. They all want to hear about that. Who you are. Are you an entrepreneur? Are you an academic? What exactly is your thing? And do you really, really want to do it? And at that point, that kid is a little too young to know, because we've talked about this, that when they're looking at you, they want to know if you're really aware that your odds of success are not awesome. Because this graph here tells all the reason why it didn't work in the hundreds. And if we made a score pie for why it worked, it'd be much fewer people out there. But hey, learn fast, mitigate the risk, and it's an awesome opportunity. It's an awesome opportunity to learn really, really a lot in your career. And when you encounter a startup, please help them. They need help because, you know, they on the risk line of not making it. For us, right now, we're at this level where we reach customers. So, you know, our total revenue volume probably going to reach almost 2 million this year. But really the challenge there, and the reason I said that I was going through a leap of faith, and when I was asked right now, is I needed to reorganize the company. And I kind of did a half of that in the past 10 days or 2 weeks since the question was asked. So now I moved from fear to action. Okay, it's not going to be perfect, but it just needs to happen. So that's just a reality. And on that, we are hiring. So if anybody is watching online, we're hiring 4 or 5 people this year. Thank you.